Hey there! So let's make some travel journals. These are the easiest, funnest travel journals ever to make. You can put different enclosures. You can make them as simple or as extravagant as you like. You can make them with an elastic enclosure. They have pockets on the inside. One signature. You can always add two. And so fun and easy to make. I have made 10 of them. But today I thought, hey, while I'm making these, maybe it would be fun if we could make one together. So we're going to make this one and the beach together. So if this looks like fun, stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so I have my two 12 by 12s here. I'm going to cut off the bottom of this one. And I want these to be 8 by 11. And if they're directional paper, your horizontal you want to be 11 and the height is going to be 8. And then we're going to keep this piece. It will make our big pocket. It's not going to on the beach one because I have a different idea. Well, no, it will. So that's going to be our big pocket and the top tuck. Do the same on our coffee sheet. You know me, I'm not really a measuring, scoring kind of type, but on this one project, I did just a little bit. The longest piece, whatever you want your longest piece, is going to be 3 3/4, and then 4. And this is if you want the little square spine versus just leaving it rounded. So here I'm going to do 9 and 9 1/4. Do that on both sheets. Three and 3/4, and 4, and 9, and 9 1/4. And that is all the measuring we have to do. So now I'm just going to fold where my score marks are and burnish it. Easy peasy. So now if you wanted to ink your edges, you would do that now. I'm not going to do that on these two, but I am going to round my corners. And that is all we need to do before we laminate. So now because I'm only laminating the one side, I'm going to put these together. And I want whichever side that I want laminated to be facing out. So I'm going to place them just like this. Take my laminating sheet, put that right up in there. Got 2 of them here. And these are 5mm laminating sheets. So they're pretty thick. If you wanted a not so bulky, you know, it's very firm. I did that because I think when you bend it afterwards, it doesn't tend to break or let go. Plus, you know, with being a traveler's journal, I think that, especially myself, there'll be some wear and tear. And I wanted it to be a heavy duty, I guess. So I'm just trying to make sure these are even. They don't have to be, but if they're even, then you don't have to worry about the laminate sticking to your scrapbook paper and possibly tearing it when you tear it off. So I've had the laminator heating up. And I'm just going to run this through. And I think that's sealed really well. If you don't think it is, you can always run it through again a second time. But I think this has a really good seal on it. Oh, heck, I might just run it through just for fun. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cut around this. You can see kind of where the seal is. We're going to cut that. We just want to cut up next to our paper. Opens up, and now you have both sheets. I'm going to trim these around. Okay, so now I have two laminate only on one side, and it's not going to come up, so your outside is completely laminated, and your inside is not. Now you can just put one sheet at a time and laminate both sides. I just think it bulks it up too much, and I prefer on these little journals for it to only be on the one side. So now I'm just going to bend my folds, crease my folds again. And we already have our two covers. Doesn't that look cool? Okay, so the next step is my pockets for the inside. I'll do the coffee one first since I'm going to use the scraps. And you could laminate this if you wanted to so that your pocket on the inside is laminated. I didn't do that on mine. And before I do that, because there's such stark white, can't speak, stark white, I'm going to do some stenciling on the inside of the coffee one real quick. So I have a couple little coffee stencils here, and I'm just going to use the vintage sepia, like vintage photo if you're using Tim Holtz distressings, and a little makeup brush. I'm actually going to put a catalog under this one because this mat is actually clean, so I'm going to keep it that way if I can. Look at that. Already got stuff all over me. All right, so I'm just going to lay this down kind of in the middle because the top and bottom probably aren't going to be much seen with the flaps. I'm probably doing more than what's actually going to be visible, but that's okay. I'm going to do a little bit here. I like it to kind of come off the page. And I might put just a little bit over here because the top of that will show a little bit. Something like that. And depending on how high I make this, my flap at the bottom, I'm going to put a little bit here too. Just like that. That should do. Okay, so now we'll take our larger piece that we cut from the 12 by 12 and make our side pocket. And I kind of like to keep mine a little bit from the edge. You can certainly make it the whole length. And I like a little room left at the top. So I'm going to mark that. Do it about right here. Because I have found that if I sew around, and I usually do, you don't have to do that. You could let your pocket be a bit higher. I bring mine down a little bit just so I have room to sew across the top. And I know you're thinking, well, why don't you sew before you put the pocket on? And the reason I don't is because I like for my sewing to catch the sides of the pockets. And that'll make more sense as we start putting this together. So first I'm going to cut the horizontal piece. And I'm doing that first because I don't want to take any off the height of it, because this piece will be used for our tuck spot in the middle, and you kind of want it to be a little longer. You'll see that in just a second. Now I'm going to do the vertical piece, and I keep this strip as well. I'll show you what we're going to make our little notebook charm with that. And the inch we cut off earlier will probably be the pocket in the bottom. So this pocket on the side looks good. So I'm going to round the corners and do a hole punch in the center, or a finger punch in the center. And I might just ink this one a little bit. And I'm going to put just a little strip of glue on the 3 sides. Doesn't have to be a lot on the sides because I'm going to sew and it will catch that. But on the bottom, you want to make sure there's plenty of glue to hold it on there, because I will not be sewing on the bottom. And I just bring it above that top bend where our flap creases. I bring it right above that so that when I fold it, it doesn't fold my pocket, like so. And now I'm going to put the tuck spot here, just in the middle. I'm going to ink around it too, and around the edges. And before I glue it down, I'm going to put my little eyelet here to hang my charm from. Something to keep in mind when you're doing your inside eyelet, if you're particular about it. I don't know why I am, but I like all my eyelets to match if I can. And so you will need 4 for the spine, 1 for this, and then if you want the wrap closure, you'll need 1 for the outside. So you'll need 6 total if you want. Well, you'll need 6 total no matter how you do it, wherever you put it, for the eyelets, if you're using eyelets. And you don't have to, because this is laminated, so it shouldn't tear. But if you're using eyelets, you need 6 total. And again, I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to approximately hit the center. And you don't really want it too close if you're, whatever you're hanging is kind of heavy. Want to give it some support there. So I'm going to use these brown ones. Fix my crocodile. And that is done. And then I'm going to glue down just the top on this one. Trying to make sure I'm in between the creases, the bottom creases of my flaps. And I'm only putting a thin line because, again, the sewing, when I sew around, it will catch that. So there's our tuck spot. And now for the bottom, I'm just going to use, this inch piece. And trying to decide which piece I want to use, because it kind of makes your words sideways. And you just, however much you want. You don't have to have it go all the way across. You can have a little short one, whatever you want. I'm going to make mine go about this length. I'll keep this too. And then also I'm going to round the corners of this. And I'm going to glue the sides and the bottom. And the bottom doesn't have to be heavy because we're going to catch it with the sewing. And just center it in between your folds. I like to put it right up next to the edge. And there you have the middle. Now I'm going to punch my eyelets. And I usually do that from the inside because I can see my creases better. And I have been using my silent setter for this because my crocodile won't reach in the middle, so I just use the silent setter for all of them, just to keep it simple, I guess. And actually, before I do that part, I'm going to sew around it. So let's finish our other one, and then I'll sew them both at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, measure my pockets, and cut it, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've cut my piece, the notch hole. I've inked around it with some Salty Ocean, and I'm going to glue this down real quick. And on the top piece of this one, on the tuck, I'm going to use the darker blue because I want it to resemble the sky, because I'm thinking that I'm going to stencil a sun, because I have a different plan on the pocket. I want to use some of this corrugated cardboard. I want it to maybe resemble sand, and I'm going to paint the top with some acrylic paint, white. Maybe I'll get the look I'm after, but, you know, who knows. And cut this. And then I'm just going to tear a jagged edge. Actually, I want to tear it this way so that it doesn't have this extra. So I'm going to tear it away from me. Something like that. I mean, you could even like paint this white, be like the, you know, those picket fence things by the beach. That would look neat. I'll turn this one sideways where it doesn't hang down quite as far and around my corners. So I'm going to just take some acrylic white paint and blot the edges of this, and then I'm going to stencil a sun, I hope. So I'm just going to take one of these things, and this one's just as crooked as all get out. I'm just going to put a little bit of paint. I hope this works. In my head, this really looks cool, but who knows? Something like that. And then I think I'm going to put a stamp in here too. Of course, I couldn't find a sun stencil, so we're going to improvise. Found a circle here. I'm just going to do it like that. I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to take a little orangish wild honey. Maybe put around the sides. Get a little orangey glow in there. And then I know that don't look very great, but I'm going to keep working on it here. And then I'm going to use these little lines as maybe some rays. It just looks like hair. All right, there's my sun. There it is. Okay, I'm going to be happy with it one way or the other. I'm going to be happy. Yes. You know, I'd been better off just to do like this and forgetting my little circle stencil, wouldn't I? But I want to put a stamp here. And again, these are supposed to be easy, not complicated. Complicated, can't even say that. So you don't have to do all this. All my other ones, I didn't do this. I don't know why. Like I say, it's the beach thing. Whenever I do beach stuff, I always lose my mind, I think. All right, so this is what the inside of this one's going to look like. So I'm going to glue this down at the top. Oh, guess what? I forgot to put my charm. Glue it again. So now I'm really going to sew. It's easy sewing. Just sew on the outside all the way around, and you'll catch the top, the bottom, and the sides of the big pocket. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have both of them sewn around. I used brown on this one, did a couple times around, and on this one, I decided just to use white, basically for the inside. I thought it would go better. I kind of wish I had added something different, because now the outside's kind of plain, but you can always add stuff. You can always add something. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to do our spines now. Add the holes to our spine. And I like to do that, like I said, from the inside so that I can see my creases and make sure I'm in the middle of those. And I use my silent setter for this. Oops. And I just guesstimate. I get as close, pretty close to the bottom, in the middle. And then I go just a little bit above it and make another hole. Like so. Turn it, do the same on the other end. Sorry for getting my elbow in the middle, probably in the screen, but really gotta push down on these things. So now I'm trying to decide if I want to use an elastic wrap for this one. I think I'll go ahead and do this one on the spine. I'll plan on using an elastic on this one. And how I did these before is I kind of have this measuring right here on my pad, so I just tried to get it. I didn't measure again. I mean, precise. I just went, okay, well, this is about the middle. I'll put it right here. Sorry, that was my dog. Now I'm going to set those in. So there's our holes for the spine. I think on this one, I'm going to use, actually, I won't do the 5th hole in the spine, just to show you the difference of how to do those. Not like you probably haven't figured it out, but just for fun, I'll show you. So I think I'll use some of these little, I don't know what color, maybe gunmetal. Okay, and there they are on that side. So I think I'm going to go ahead and punch this one. And all of our eyelets are done. Ready to put in the elastic cord for our signatures. And put the wrap on it, and we're done. And you know, honestly, before I did all the sewing and adding the things in here, I mean, none of that's necessary. You could have just left it and done your eye holes and called it good. I mean, we didn't need the eyelets. We didn't need all this other. I just like to make it difficult. No, I just like to add things because I think even the simplest ways to make a journal, we can just by these simple things, I think we've really made a beautiful journal. Okay, I think for this one, because there's, you know, black wording and some black stamp, and I think I'm going to use this bright enclosure just to zhuzh it up. Is that a word? So I think for the cord on this one, I'm just going to use black. And how I usually do it is, and doing it like this, you can put 2 signatures in. I'm only going to put 1, but I kind of leave this much, maybe an inch on each end. So you hold it down over your deal, leave maybe, we'll do 1.5 inches on each end extra. And then that will be plenty. So we're going to run it through the inside and back through that second hole. Same on this end, the exact same thing. And whoops, don't let go. And then you want it not super tight. You don't want it to bend your folder, but tight enough that it, you know, doesn't let your paper slip around. And I have been making my knot at the bottom. You could certainly make it here in the middle. You can make it wherever you want. Just, and actually, because I've said that, I might just make this one in the middle. And I just do a knot. And that's, you can always, I'll probably loosen it a little bit. I think that's okay. I'll leave that in case it is too tight. When I go to put my signature in, I can always loosen it. So it's easy as that. Ready for your signature. And I'm going to iron this before I put it on the outside. On the coffee one, I was trying to decide whether to go with a light brown or a dark brown. I think I'm going to do dark. Again, I'm going to leave about 1.5 inches, 2 inches on each end. Give yourself plenty of room because it just makes it easier to tie it. And you can always snip the extra off. No need to be chintzy with it. This stuff, this elastic cord is not expensive. But for some reason, I'm always trying to cut exactly what I need, and that's silly. And this one I'm going to do at the bottom like I normally do because I'm going to have the middle closure. See, I just make it difficult on myself by not cutting some extra. If you cut extra, you're not going to have to fight it like this. But I prefer to make it just as difficult as I can when I'm doing it. All right. So, all right. So silly. I don't know why I don't just cut extra. Isn't that silly? Silly, silly. All right. All right, so there is that one. And actually, you could have done this part first. It's just, I don't know why I always do it last. So what I do here is I usually close it up, wrap it around. And I do 2 of them because I just feel like this cord that I have is very thin and it just doesn't seem like enough. So I do it I do 2 bands. And I'm going to cut it about right there. And I'm going to do 2 of them. And you can, on these, make your knot ahead of time if you want. And just leave it loose so that you can pull it tighter when you see how much room you need. Pinch it together. Bring it out. And see if that's tight enough. I will probably make it just I'll probably leave it like that for now. You can always loosen it or tighten it later. I mean, depending on, how much stuff you have in your journal. And this one, just same way. I kind of hold this one tight so that I have plenty of room to get both of them. That way it kind of pulls it over and I can shove it through there. And I mean, you can twist these or however you want, to give them some extra design. I usually just leave them separate and then maybe move them a little bit, on the, depending on what kind of a charm I'm going to put, but that is the elastic kind. And now we're ready to put in our signatures. So I'm going to gather up papers for both signatures, and then maybe we can do some charms and maybe a little something something on the spine. Okay, so I've created signatures for both books. Something I want to tell you, an easy tip, I think, for these is if you create a template, gather all your papers together that you want, and this template will save you a lot of time. And how I got my template was you want it to fit inside of the top holes, because I'm going to run my signature under that string. If you want it to be under the second string, of course, you're going to want your template to fit inside of the second 2 holes. But because I'm running it longer, I'm going to do mine on this string. I measured what it would be to be inside of those 2 holes and cut my template accordingly. And then all of my papers, I put them in, tore around to keep them this size, because I knew I didn't want it any taller than this, and I didn't want it any wider than this so that my journal would close. With that in mind, I gathered up different papers, and this one, you can bind these with your 3-hole pamphlet stitch. You can use a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I sewed this one, just used sewing machine to sew this one. This one, I just used staples, rusty staples, because that's kind of the feel of these papers. They're kind of rustic looking. This is rust dye paper. And I just gathered different papers for mine. You can, you know, certainly use normal plain white papers. You can take papers from a planner, anything, a calendar that you want. So by making my template fit inside those 2 outside holes, you want to make sure that this will move up and down without tearing the top or bottom of your paper. If you get it too big, it will run into your paper, and every time you flip or move, it's going to tear your paper over time. So you just, like I just did, you tuck it underneath that top string. If you want it to be where bowstrings, it goes under bowstrings. You'll want to make your template smaller. Again, like I said, I made mine larger, taller, and you just raise up your string, slide in your signature, and that is your journal. Isn't that awesome? How easy is that? So on this one, I went ahead and took some old jewelry and made a charm for the eyelet. Just run a jump ring through the elastic on the top. And then I added a couple jump rings to the string that closes it for the enclosure on this one. This one I just held on with a bow pin to one of the strings. And the other one I put on a clasp, as I think that it will be removed, maybe, you know, use on a purse or whatever. Anyway, that's how I finished this one. And then for this one, I'm going to put a little charm in here. I've just put a couple little things on a bulb pin. So you have your little charm in the middle. And then I'll tuck something in this pocket and underneath here, large pocket here. Then for the enclosure with the sari silk, I just run it through this eye hole. So how I like to tie them after I get this one through is I just wrap this around a couple of times. Of course, you can go any way you want to. It's kind of my nature to go to the back side first. You want to make sure one leg is at the bottom. Your second piece you're going to put on this side of your leg. Of course, this will be tight, so you just tuck it up underneath there. And see how it's on this side of the enclosure. And then just bring your leg around. And don't forget, we have the inch that we cut off at the beginning. And I just made a little scrappy notebook out of that with all the papers that I cut off. And again, put it on a jump ring. I will clasp this on probably to the front. Be something that they could take off and use elsewhere, in a purse, in the car, put on your key ring. And on your charms, you can run them through the eye hole, of course. I didn't really like to do that because I used the smaller eye hole. It seemed like there wasn't enough room for it to move around freely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another little eyelet right here. Now I can just run my bow pin through that hole. And your charm can hang right down beside of your enclosure and not be in the way. And then, of course, I'll hang this from that, knowing that it will go on something else eventually. But, I mean, this will be what your book looks like, and your charm won't be in the way of always opening and closing. I hope you make some of these. I think that they are the perfect beginner journal. And thanks for watching my video. I will see you next time, guys. Bye.